Michelle and I like the Big Bang Theory. Big Bang, Big Bang. And we watch it. Well, we used to watch it, I guess, pretty consistently. But we recently decided we were going to purchase it on DVD and just own it. So we have a little shop here in town that sells used DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff like that. So we're getting each of the seasons for like $3.33 a piece. And we bought the first 3 seasons several weeks ago, and then a few days ago we got 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to eventually gather up the complete series. And when we do that, we'll have it to watch whenever we want. Now, I remember how obnoxious Sheldon was. And I remember saying that there was no freaking way on God's green earth that I could ever live with a moron like that. There's just no freaking way. Now, and this brings me to the topic of what I wanted to discuss. When I was in high school, I hung out with people who were kind of like Leonard and Sheldon and Koothrappali and, you know, all those guys. I hung out with people like that. Hell, I was one of them. I wasn't actually smart. I was just a nerd or a geek or whatever. But I lacked the hyper intelligence that went with that. But the other guys thought that they were smart. They thought they were that smart. As a matter of fact, I hung out with a couple people who I think would think they were Sheldon. They acted like it. Of course, this was the 80s, way before Big Bang Theory. But I hung out with people like Sheldon, or I should say, who thought they were like Sheldon. They acted like Sheldon. They just weren't smart like Sheldon, even though they thought they were. Now, anyway, I was okay with being the person that was thought of as not quite intelligent as they were. I was okay with that back then. And it didn't really bother me too much to hang around these Sheldon-like people. Now, the older I got, and the more experience I got with life, I realized that these morons were idiots. They really were. But I did get with another group of people, hung out with another group of friends in the probably 90s. Now, they didn't act like Sheldon, but they were very fond of the fact that they were smart and that they were smarter than I was, and intellectually, school-wise, book-wise, which didn't seem to bother me up to a point, but the topic I'm about to discuss is where it really hit the fan. So, as I said, nerdy geek guy as myself, always have been. I was really into Dungeons and Dragons and all that stuff. So even in my 30s and maybe 40s, but definitely into my 30s, you know, we still liked playing D&D and all that kind of stuff. Now, the second group of people I was hanging out with, I worked with. So I was with them a lot because I spent most of my time at work because I loved it so much. Not necessarily because I had to. I just loved my job. And I spent a lot of extra time at work whenever I could. I was getting paid for it. So I thought, you know, hell yeah. Anyway, after a short period of time, I became friends. We'll use the word friends. I became friends with the people I worked with, and they were kind of nerdy too. And again, intellectual. They all went to college. They all had degrees, that sort of stuff. I did not. And we got together and we started playing Dungeons and Dragons and just hanging out and shit like that. So one day they were discussing a topic, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the topic was. I'm not 100% sure, but it had something to do with quantum physics. Now, I love quantum physics. I love the concepts of it, the idea of it. I used to read as much as I possibly could deal with on it. Most of it kind of went over my head, but I did grasp some of it. But I just enjoyed, and I still do, enjoyed the concept and idea of quantum physics and string theory. So anyway, somehow we got on the topic of quantum physics, and I had mentioned, just to interject myself into the conversation, that I had recently read an article in Scientific American on something about quantum physics that we were discussing at the time. And everybody stops and just looks at me weird. And I look at them back because I had no clue what the hell they were looking at me. They stopped the talking. They all looked at me kind of weird like. And I'm like, what? And one of my quote-unquote friends looks at me and says, I didn't know you read the Scientific American. I'm like, yeah, I read Scientific American every freaking month. I said, it's a fantastic magazine. He looks at me and he goes, yeah, I know it is, but I didn't think you would read it. I looked at him, I said, well, what's that supposed to mean? He said, well, you just don't strike me as the type of person that can understand Scientific American. Yeah. And that kind of pissed me off. So anyway, I kind of let it roll off my back a little bit. And, we continued and continued. Well, eventually we all kind of split up anyways. But that leads into another story. So here is another story for you. I am blessed. I mean, seriously blessed. I don't know why, but I don't really care why. I just am super blessed. And I say this. Things that happen in my life always tend to turn out to be very good and positive for me in one way or another, even if it doesn't seem that way in the beginning of the situation. Perfect example is, and I don't know how many years ago this was, I really truly don't, but let's just give it a good round number and say 10 years. So approximately 10 years ago, something occurred in my life that was due to my own actions that caused tremendous turmoil in not only my life, but everybody's life around me. I lost my job. I lost every one of my so-called friends, including the people I was training with and things to that nature. I mean, everything went to shit. Now, granted, it was due to my own actions, not disagreeing with that, but it did show me who was going to be there for me and who wasn't going to be there for me. My wife was the only person that stood up for me and was on and stood there with me. She was the only person that was with me during this whole crisis. Well, this situation caused me to spiral and I was already fucked up. My sister had passed away a couple years prior. I went completely freaking bonkers, and I mean legitimately freaking nuts. Lost my freaking mind. So anyway, the situation that became of that drew upon my issue with the loss of my sister, and yeah, anyway, a situation drew upon that and caused me even more trouble. Now, as I said before, I lost all my friends, I lost my job, I lost everything. It caused great havoc in my life. But it turned out to be one of the most positive things that could have ever happened to me. I'm going to continue my little chat. So, my sister passing away caused me to go insane. I mean, legitimately, paperwork provided, government confirmed, psychologically defective. And due to that, I was off of work for a year, and they let me come back. But I took a year off of work. I was just too fucked up, and it was too early. I still wasn't capable of dealing with shit. So anyway, went back to work too early. I was still messed up. Well, I'm still messed up today, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But anyway, didn't turn out well. And yes, I lost my job. I lost everybody that I talked with, my so-called friends. Just stopped hanging out with me, which I don't blame them. You know, I mean, they had to protect themselves, I guess it was. So everybody that I hung out with, as far as police officers and all that, they stopped hanging out with me, and it was just a mess. So anyway, that was a horrible time for me. It really truly was. It was a horrible time for me. And of course I didn't see it at the time. Then I got put on disability. And that angered me, and I had issues with that whole thing, and again, I didn't see the positiveness with that either. And it took me a few years. It took me a few years to come to the conclusion that that whole situation was a freaking blessing. But now, and again, like I said, I don't know really how long ago. We'll just say 10 years. It could be a few less. It could be a few more. I'm not really sure. But it has afforded me the life that I live now. And I love it. Wouldn't go back.